Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and in this unasked for installment of our Shadow Work and Tarot series, we're going to be talking about calling back our personal and collective power with Thecla and the Strength card. So this was not on the poll when I asked what shadow work and tarot video we should do next, and I promise I will be getting to all of those videos. But this video has been kind of sitting heavily on me for a while now, and it feels like a really important message to be talking about. And that is the importance of calling back both our personal power and our responsibility to use that personal power as a part of the collective. Personal power is like a buzzword right now. Stepping into your personal power, calling back your power, all these things. That's beautiful. That's important. That's something we should all be doing. But there is this sort of intense individualism within the spiritual community that ends the message there, when really the message needs to be taken another step further and talked about how we're using that personal power as a part of the collective voice. And this is where I want to talk about Thecla and the Strength card. So this is the Strength card from the Shadow Work edition of the Moonchild Tarot. I think we're all familiar with the Strength card. Usually there's a maiden and a lion involved. There have been lots of takes of this card over time, right? This is Thecla's depiction from the Divine Feminine Oracle by Megan Watterson. Again, we have a young woman and a lion. Now, Thecla's story can be found in the Acts of Paul and Thecla, and I'm not going to be getting into Paul and the history of how his words were changed and all the things. But the Acts of Paul and Thecla is an excellent example of the church changing and burying stories that did not fit their narrative of the early church. In history, we have archaeological and scriptural evidence that Thecla preached alongside Paul for the duration of his life, and we know the Acts of Paul and Thecla would have been widely read by the early Christian population simply based on the number of copies of it that we have recovered. The Acts of Paul and Thecla is where we find her story, where she's a young woman, 17, I believe. She's engaged. She's the daughter of, some well-known man, and she hears Paul preaching from her window, and she feels compelled to become baptized, to follow Paul, to learn about Jesus. And to do that, she leaves her family, she leaves her fiance. So she leaves what society has set out for her as the proper thing to do as a wife or as a daughter, as a woman. What the path that she should be following is all set out for her, and she abandons that to follow what is authentic for her. As we go through her story, she meets numerous trials, right? Paul says she's not ready to be baptized. She has numerous trials, and her story finally brings her into the ring, where she has been stripped naked, she has been branded with the word sacrilege, and she is going to be fighting for her life against all kinds of wild beasts. The first of which is a lioness, who turns into her protector, keeping her safe from all the other wild beasts until she finally meets her end. And throughout her time in the ring, the crowd finally sees that the real sacrilege would be to put her to death. And the women begin to toss herbs and flowers into the ring to lull the beasts to sleep. At some point, there's a fire, and she, makes the sign of the cross, and then there's a thunderstorm that puts out the fire. And she ends by baptizing herself before her life is formally spared. In this story, we are supposed to identify with Thecla, right? And how she went against the grain to follow her authenticity. How in the ring she was saved over and over because she followed her authentic path. How she finally took it upon herself to baptize herself because she knew that she didn't need anybody else to confirm her connection with the divine. That this was something she had the power to do herself. And through calling back her power, through stepping into the full seat of her power, her life is spared. And we are supposed to identify with that, right? You can see in this image her with the lion. The the like little mantra on here is, I call my power back from all times and all places. I am my own. Her title is the Prophetess of True Power. We see similar messages of that when we talk about the Strength card, right? Where we have the internal strength. Our power lies within. It is not about a violent force or show of power that connects us to the divine, that connects us to ourself, that connects us to our true, powerful, authentic, divine humanity. That is all stuff that lies within us. That is stuff that nobody can take away. In Thecla's description within the Divine Feminine, one of the things she says in here is that Thecla's story echoes from the ancient world to the modern world. Your life is up to you. Yes, there is the power of prayer, of faith, of asking for all possible spiritual support, but there's also divine within all of us. It's will that's aligned with the soul's purpose. We remember that true power is when we divest all outside authority of the power we had been giving them. Power is calling back all control we give to others to dictate our lives. And we see similar themes and stories and messages within the Strength card. However, so I should say, when the Strength card is pulled, I am often asking, where have I given my power away? Where do I need to look within to find the power that was always within me? And how can I use that to step into my authenticity in any given moment and to not betray myself in any given moment, in any given situation? What I also want us to do is I want us to take Thecla's story and the message of the Strength card one step further. And I want us to realize that we are not just meant to identify with Thecla. We are also meant to identify with the crowd. We are meant to also see ourselves as a part of the collective and to ask ourselves honestly if we are screaming for Thecla's death or we are roaring for her life. In Megan Watterson's book, and I believe she has a whole book coming out on Thecla, which I'm very excited about, she outlines Thecla's story, and when we get to the point where the crowd has decided that the true sacrilege would be to put Thecla to death, she writes, the women in the crowd now recognize who she is, or maybe they recognize themselves in her. This is the part in her story that I love the most. It's the part that gives me the most hope. When the women in the crowd no longer see her as separate from them, and so they refuse to let her be harmed. And when we look at the state of the world, when we look at what is happening in Gaza, in other places like Africa and other places around the globe, here in the United States with our LGBTQ rights and women's reproductive rights, the question isn't only, how are you doing the healing work to step into your personal power, to call back your personal power so you can live your most authentic, most aligned, most happy life? The question is also, once you have called back that power, how are you using it when you sit in the crowd? Because you are also part of the crowd. As much as we are Thecla in the ring, we are also a part of the collective watching her battle. And the question becomes, are we sitting in the collective, screaming for her death or roaring for her life? How are we using our power to help the people in our collective that are marginalized, that are fighting for their own rights? We cannot be healthy as individuals when our collective is suffering. And our collective cannot be healthy when we as individuals are out of our power and out of our alignment. I am in no way suggesting the same thing that the church has suggested for the last 2,000 years, that we self-betray that we people please to the point of exhaustion, that we take care of everyone else at the expense of ourselves. I am in no way recommending that, okay? I am suggesting, I am asking us all to look at how we care for ourselves, how we call our power back, and how we can then pour into the collective from a place of overflow. Because we cannot be healthy when our collective is suffering. We are too intertwined. The relationship is symbiotic. We need our collective. We need our communities. And if we as a spiritual community are going to walk around preaching how we are not all that separate, that we are all one, then when one of us is in the ring being harmed, we are all in the ring being harmed. So when I pull the strength card, depending on what I'm asking about, depending on other cards that are coming up in my spread, I'm going to ask myself about my personal power, where I've given my personal power away, and also how I'm showing up for the collective from a place of empowerment, not from a place of self-betrayal, and from a place of holding myself accountable to what that should actually look like. So this has been my little chat on calling back our power with the strength card and using that power as a part of our collective. If there's anything you would like me to expand on, please leave that in the comments below. I will still be getting to all the other videos in our tarot and shadow work series. I'm going to be talking about feminine wounding, spiritual authority, all the other things that were on that list. So please know that those videos are coming. If this is something that you feel like you really are ready to dive into, calling back your power, healing your feminine wounding and people pleasing and all the things, my 3-month intensive shadow work program is actually going to be starting sometime in February due to personal conflicts. And that is going to be a 3-month deep dive into feminine wounding and shadow work. All that information is below. That program is Reclaiming Eve. And if you want just a taste of what shadow work can look like, especially with working with deity, that masterclass is going to be 3 hours. It's held on January 28th, and the link for that is below as well. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.